Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Derek, and in this video I'm going to go over 5 tools that I purchased that surprisingly I just don't use that much. So keep in mind as I go through this video that I'm just a DIY guy. I do work for myself, take care of my own vehicles, do my own welding projects, things like that. So number 1 is this Pittsburgh pass-through ratchet wrench. It's pass-through sockets and the ratcheting wrench that operates them. So this thing I bought thinking like I would use it all of the time, and if I was using a lot longer bolts or all thread, maybe even things like that, potentially I could see myself using it a lot more often. But I thought even in just general mechanic work I'd use this thing quite a bit more, but surprisingly I just don't. I almost never have a need for it. It is a pretty good wrench. It does have a little bit of use under it, and it's probably one of my more used tools out of these tools that I'm talking about, but just surprisingly I don't really ever need it. And if I do need something like this, most of the time I'll just go grab one of my ratcheting wrenches, as in one of these guys. They work honestly just as well, and they're usually easier to grab than trying to sort through the sockets and finding just the right socket, because the sockets on those are actually, the sizes are pretty hard to see. Okay, my number 2 tool is this right angle drill. It is the only one I have. It's in this Bauer 20 volt tool system. Has nothing to do with it being Bauer. I'm sure that I will reach a point in my life where I'm using something like this a lot more often, but I thought I was going to be using it pretty regularly in fabrication and repairs, things like that. But I honestly just almost never use it. In fact, I shouldn't even say that. I think I've never used that right angle drill ever. And if I had, it was only to test it out and just use it simply because it was there and I hadn't had a chance to use it yet. So the right angle drill, definitely one of my most unused tools I've ever purchased. And that was kind of an expensive one, even for Bauer. So my number 3 might potentially ruffle some feathers, I imagine, especially some of the older guys out there. And I don't mean that it's a bad tool. I'm not saying you can't like yours. I'm not saying you can't use yours. I'm just saying that in this day and age with cordless power tool technology, a hacksaw is my number 3, and I never use it. This blade has seen some use. I bought this back when I was a plumber. I thought I'd cut broken pipe out of holes on occasion. And I actually do have a little mini hacksaw that I did use sometimes for that, but really I didn't even hardly use that thing either. And I've definitely really not used this full-size hacksaw very often. It is a Milwaukee brand. It's nice. I think it's a pretty good hacksaw, but surprisingly, I just never use the thing because I can always go grab a recip saw or an angle grinder. They'll pretty much always take care of me if I need something like this. And being that I have those tools and cordless tools, Sawzall and angle grinder or recip saw, I pretty much never have a need for that. If I need a hacksaw, I'll grab one of those tools. So my 4th tool is a bench grinder. This might surprise a lot of people. This is a little like 6-inch Porter cable bench grinder. It's pretty heavy, and I'm not going to hold it up for the next 2 minutes as I talk through it. That is definitely the most used tool in this entire list. I've used it quite a bit. In fact, I've used it in the last couple of weeks. But for what the tool is and for how long I've owned it, I just don't use it that much. I probably pull it out a total of about 2 to 3 times a year to use it. It just happened to me the other day when I used it. I'll give you 2 main reasons why this bench grinder is a not very often used tool. Maybe 3. Number 1, it's small and weak. It doesn't do a very good job. It'll do some work, but it doesn't do most of the work that I do, especially when I go kind of rounding off or shaping parts with the grinder part, or brushing parts or material that I'm fabricating with or whatever with the wire brush. I can pretty much just always grab an angle grinder with a grinding wheel or the wire brush. Sometimes I can get a little more precise with that wheel, but I just don't really use it as much as I thought because the angle grinders are just so handy. The number 2 reason why I don't use it is because I don't have a good place for it. If I had like a nice mounted pedestal that it sat on somewhere in the shop, tucked away, maybe not even tucked away, along the wall somewhere where I could just go up, flip the switch and use it whenever I needed to, I could definitely see myself using it a lot more often, especially the wire brush. So my shop limitations are a part of that. The size is a part of that. It's just a little bit too small. I blended my 2nd and 3rd reason into one, I suppose. But also that the angle grinders pretty much can do the same job most of the time. They're just maybe slightly less convenient if I had this mounted on a pedestal right there, easy to turn on and use whenever I needed it somewhere in the shop. So in the future, I'd like to get a bigger 8-inch one, like maybe the Hercules or the Bauer version. And then I need a bigger shop. Someday I will have a bigger shop. And I'd like to put somewhere along the wall one of these bench grinders on their own little pedestal, little stand, so I can just walk up and use it whenever I need to. And that will probably change and come off this list. So the fifth and final tool in this list is a drill press. And this one really surprises me, especially how bad I thought I would need one of these. When I really started setting up my shop, it was one of, I don't know, top 10 tools on every wish list I was making of tools I wanted to get to help set up my shop, because I thought I would use it so much, especially with metal fabrication and stuff like that. I just don't really need to drill like precision holes all that often. Of course, I don't build a lot of moving parts when I'm fabricating. It's mostly a lot of just stationary things. So that makes a little bit of a difference. Also, I don't really have the greatest place for it to always just be set up. If it was always just set up and plugged in with some drill bits nearby, the shop limitations do apply to this too. I'd probably use it a little bit more, but I had a Porter cable one of these, and that thing was absolute junk. And so I ended up going and buying a slightly bigger version from Harbor Freight here, still just one of the benchtop ones. This is nothing against the drill press itself. I just literally have not used this thing but maybe 1 or 2 times in the 2 years that I've owned it. So as time goes on, my needs will change and I'll use some of these tools a little more, some of them a little less. Especially the bench grinder when I get into like a 20 by 30 minimum size shop. That's about the size bare minimum I'd like to get when I get out on my 10-acre hobby farm. Someday, if not there, wherever I live. In there, I'll have room for a pedestal for the bench grinder, hopefully a place for the drill press, if not a freestanding drill press by then, especially if I start to use this benchtop one a lot more. You know, my needs will change. I'll be doing construction projects that right angle drill will probably come in handy more in those days when I'm doing a lot more actually building projects out there on the property than right now. But like I said, the needs will change. We'll just have to see where things go. But anyway, guys, I really appreciate you watching this video. Go ahead and give me a big thumbs up. Helps me out with the YouTube algorithms. If you're not a subscriber, please go down and click subscribe for me. I'd really appreciate that as well. Again, thanks for watching. I hope to see you in my next video. We'll see you later.